Emma Rodriguez had experienced many disappointments in her 12 years of existence, but this educational field trip to Kepler Station was definitely cracking the top 5. Right up there with the time her mom made Brussels sprouts pizza and called it fusion cuisine. "Now, children," announced Mrs. Patterson, their teacher, with the kind of forced enthusiasm that made Emma wonder if adults got special training in how to make everything sound boring. "We're approaching one of humanity's most advanced research stations. Isn't that exciting?" Emma glanced around the shuttle at her classmates, who were all glued to the windows, making appropriate ooh and ah noises. Apparently, she was the only one who found the idea of touring a glorified space laboratory about as thrilling as watching paint dry in zero gravity. She pressed her face against the small porthole next to her seat and sighed. The research station looked exactly like every other space station she'd seen in documentaries. Big, gray, and floating in the void like a particularly uninspired piece of space furniture. "At least you get to sleep through this nightmare," she whispered to the small stasis pod secured under her seat. Inside the pod, Brutus was enjoying what the ship's medical officer had cheerfully described as mandatory sedation for the safety and comfort of all passengers. Because apparently bringing your emotional support honey badger on a field trip was considered problematic and a violation of 17 different safety protocols. Emma had argued that Brutus was technically a therapy animal, prescribed by Dr. Martinez after what the school counselors politely called the incident with the cafeteria bullies. What they didn't mention was that the incident had been resolved when Brutus wandered into the lunchroom during one of his unsupervised explorations and scared Marcus Henderson so badly that the kid wet himself in front of the entire 8th grade. Dr. Martinez had been very clear that Brutus provided emotional regulation through controlled exposure to manageable chaos. Emma just knew that having a honey badger for a best friend meant nobody messed with her twice. But the Space Tourism Board had different ideas about what constituted appropriate travel companions, which is why Brutus was currently unconscious and Emma was trapped, listening to Mrs. Patterson explain the fascinating history of orbital waste management systems. "The station processes over 200 tons of recycled materials daily," Mrs. Patterson continued, apparently under the impression that this was the kind of fact that would inspire young minds. Emma was seriously considering asking if she could join Brutus in stasis when the lights suddenly flickered. Then the shuttle shuddered. Then someone up front started screaming in that particular pitch that suggested imminent doom. Through the porthole, Emma watched as a ship roughly the size of a small moon slid into view. It was black, angular, and covered in what looked like spikes and teeth. Basically, it screamed, "We're here to ruin your day," in 17 different alien languages. "Attention, human vessel," came a voice over the comm system that sounded like someone gargling gravel mixed with bad intentions. "Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in immediate consumption." Mrs. Patterson fainted. Several students started crying. The pilot began what Emma was pretty sure were last rites in 3 different religions. Emma looked down at Brutus's stasis pod and shook her head. "I swear, the one time you're not awake to cause chaos, actual chaos shows up instead." The shuttle lurched violently as something clamped onto their hull. Emergency lights bathed everything in angry red, and Emma could hear the distinctive sound of cutting tools working through their outer airlock. In the confusion of screaming passengers and emergency protocols, Emma found herself pushed toward the back of the shuttle during the evacuation procedures. A blast door slammed shut between her and the rest of the group, sealing her in the maintenance section with nothing but emergency supplies, Brutus's stasis pod, and what was rapidly becoming a very bad day. She could hear muffled voices through the walls, alien clicks and growls mixed with human pleading. Whatever was boarding their shuttle didn't sound like it was here for diplomatic purposes. Emma sat down next to Brutus's pod and began working on the emergency release mechanism. "Okay, buddy," she said, watching the progress bar slowly inch toward awakening. "Time to earn your therapy animal credentials." Aboard the Screeth war vessel Deathclaw's Revenge, which was honestly a bit redundant in the naming department, but nobody had asked Emma's opinion, Captain Razorclaw was having what he considered a very productive day. "Report," he growled to his lieutenant Bloodfang, who was hunched over a scanner that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and aggressive intentions. "Captain, we have successfully captured a human educational vessel," Bloodfang announced with the kind of pride usually reserved for conquering entire star systems. "Preliminary scans indicate 37 adult humans and 14 spawn." Captain Razorclaw's mandibles clicked together in satisfaction. The Screeth were renowned throughout the galaxy as apex predators, feared by civilizations across 17 star sectors. They had evolved on a death world, where everything tried to eat everything else, and they had come out on top through a combination of natural weapons, pack hunting tactics, and an unfortunate tendency toward dramatic monologuing. "Excellent," Razorclaw said, examining his reflection in a polished metal surface and adjusting his ceremonial battle scars. "The humans will make fine additions to our larder. Their spawn are considered a delicacy, I'm told." "Sir," interrupted Bloodfang, "there appears to be one anomaly in the scan results." Explained. "Haum of the spawn appears to have been separated from the others during the boarding process. She's sealed in the maintenance section of their vessel." Razorclaw let out what he probably thought was a terrifying laugh, but sounded more like a garbage disposal having an existential crisis. One frightened human child, trapped and alone. This should provide excellent sport before the feast. He turned to address the boarding party, a collection of 7-foot-tall, lizard-like creatures covered in natural armor plating and equipped with claws that could shred titanium. They looked like someone had crossed a crocodile with a medieval knight and given the result anger management issues. "Listen well, warriors of the Screeth," Razorclaw declared, because apparently everything was a dramatic speech opportunity. "We shall hunt this lone spawn through the corridors of her own vessel. She will know fear. She will know despair. And then she will know the honor of feeding the greatest predators in the galaxy." The boarding party roared their approval, a sound that would have made a pack of wolves reconsider their career choices. Meanwhile, back on the shuttle, Emma was getting increasingly impatient with the stasis pod's revival sequence. "Come on," she muttered, watching the progress bar creep along at what felt like the speed of bureaucracy. "How long does it take to wake up one moderately grumpy honey badger?" She could hear the aliens cutting through the blast door, their tools throwing sparks that danced across the maintenance bay like deadly confetti. Their voices carried through the metal, a mix of clicks, growls, and what sounded suspiciously like someone arguing about proper seasoning techniques. "Human spawn," came a voice that managed to sound both menacing and oddly pretentious. "We know you are in there. Surrender yourself, and your death will be swift." Emma rolled her eyes. "Great! Alien death threats, with a side of false advertising, because swift death definitely sounds trustworthy, coming from something that probably considers screaming a condiment." The cutting sounds intensified, and Emma could see the blast door beginning to glow cherry red around the edges. The aliens were about 3 minutes away from breaking through, and the stasis pod was showing another 4 minutes until Brutus would be fully conscious. "This is either going to be really bad timing or absolutely perfect timing," Emma said to herself. Knowing Brutus, probably both. On the other side of the door, Captain Razorclaw was personally overseeing the breach, which mostly involved him standing around looking important while his crew did the actual work. This was standard Screeth leadership protocol. "Remember," he told his warriors, "we want the spawn alive initially. Terror seasoning makes the meat more tender." Bloodfang nodded enthusiastically. "Should we be concerned about human defensive capabilities, sir?" "From a single juvenile? Unlikely. Humans are weak, soft creatures, who rely entirely on their technology. Without their ships and weapons, they are merely mobile protein packages." If Emma could have heard this conversation, she would have laughed. Instead, she was quietly counting down the seconds until Brutus woke up and demonstrated exactly why humans had conquered their own death world before venturing into space. The stasis pod finally beeped cheerfully, as if waking up an apex predator in the middle of an alien invasion was just another routine Tuesday. The lid hissed open, releasing a cloud of medical-grade sleeping gas and one very disoriented honey badger. Brutus emerged slowly, like a furry, compact nightmare rising from a technological coffin. He was about 3 feet long, covered in gray and black fur that looked deceptively soft, and equipped with claws that could open a can or a ribcage with equal efficiency. His small, dark eyes blinked owlishly as he processed his surroundings. "Morning, sunshine," Emma said, scratching behind his ears. "Sleep well? Because we've got company, and they're not here to sell us alien scout cookies." Brutus stretched, yawned, and made a sound that was part chirp, part growl, and entirely irritated. He had been having a perfectly good dream about raiding a beehive, and waking up in a metal box surrounded by flashing lights was not improving his mood. Emma quickly filled him in on their situation while the cutting sounds grew louder. "So basically space lizards interrupted your nap to eat us. I know, the audacity is breathtaking." At the mention of interrupted sleep, Brutus's expression shifted from general annoyance to something that would have made a wolverine apologize and back away slowly. His fur began to bristle, and he made a low sound that suggested someone was about to have a very bad day. "That's my boy," Emma said fondly. "Remember, they woke you up. This is self-defense." The blast door finally gave way with a shower of sparks and molten metal. Through the smoking breach came Captain Razorclaw, followed by 3 of his finest warriors. They had to duck to fit through the opening, their scaled armor gleaming in the emergency lighting. They spread out in the maintenance bay with the practiced efficiency of predators who had done this many times before. Their weapons were drawn, their claws extended, and their confidence absolutely bulletproof. "Ah," said Captain Razorclaw, spotting Emma sitting calmly next to what appeared to be a small, furry animal. "There you are, little morsel. We were beginning to think you had evaporated." Emma looked up at the 7-foot-tall lizard creature with the casual interest of someone observing mildly unusual weather. "Hi there, quick question. Are you guys actually this bad at research, or is dramatic entrance your primary skill set?" The Screeth warriors exchanged glances. This was not the cowering terror response they had expected. "Insolent spawn," Razorclaw snarled. "You will learn respect before you become our meal. But first, what is this pathetic creature beside you? Did you bring livestock for our convenience?" Emma's eyebrows rose. "Livestock? Oh, this is fantastic. You guys really didn't do your homework, did you?" Brutus, meanwhile, had finished his assessment of the situation. 4 large, scaly creatures had interrupted his nap, were making threatening gestures toward his human, and were standing between him and the exit. In honey badger mathematics, this equation had exactly one solution. "This is Brutus," Emma said pleasantly, still petting the increasingly tense ball of fur beside her. "He's my therapy animal. Helps me with emotional regulation and social anxiety." "A therapy animal," Bloodfang laughed, the sound echoing off the metal walls. "Humans are even more pathetic than our intelligence reports suggested. You brought a pet to comfort you in your final moments?" "Well, he does help me stay calm," Emma admitted, "though I'm not sure you're going to find him particularly comforting." Brutus stood up, stretched again, and looked directly at Captain Razorclaw with the kind of focused attention usually reserved for things that were about to become recently deceased. "Behold," Razorclaw announced to his crew, "the mighty human military response. A child and her fuzzy companion. Truly, we should have brought our entire fleet for such a formidable opponent." The Screeth warriors laughed dutifully at their captain's joke. Emma sighed and gave Brutus one final pat. "Okay, buddy," she said softly. "These nice aliens think you're livestock. They also interrupted your nap, threatened to eat me, and just laughed at you. You know what to do." Brutus looked up at her with an expression that clearly said, "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "I'm sure," Emma confirmed. "Besides, they started it." That was all the permission Brutus needed. He turned toward the Screeth warriors, and his entire demeanor shifted from sleepy confusion to something that would have made a berserker Viking reconsider his life choices. The last thing Captain Razorclaw saw before chaos descended was a small, furry creature that suddenly looked a lot less like livestock and a lot more like concentrated violence in a deceptively cute package. What happened next would later be described by xenobiologists as a masterclass in why Earth's ecosystem produces the galaxy's most unreasonable fauna. But in the moment, it just looked like 30 pounds of absolute fury had decided to redecorate the maintenance bay with alien body parts. Brutus launched himself at the nearest Screeth warrior with the kind of acceleration that defied several laws of physics and at least one law of common sense. His trajectory was perfect, his aim was flawless, and his landing technique could best be described as hostile takeover. "Oh, there he goes," Emma said conversationally, settling back against a supply crate like she was watching her favorite nature documentary. "You might want to take notes. This is educational." The first warrior, a 7-foot-tall killing machine named Gutripper, suddenly found himself with a honey badger attached to his face. Brutus had locked onto the alien's snout with his jaws and was now demonstrating the grip strength that allowed his species to hang on to angry buffalo while being bucked around like a furry pinball. Gutripper began what could generously be called dancing, but was more accurately described as panic flailing while a small mammal redesigned his facial features. His claws scraped uselessly at Brutus, who had positioned himself in the one spot that was impossible to reach without risking self-inflicted decapitation. "See, here's what your intelligence reports probably missed," Emma explained to the remaining aliens who were watching their colleague's predicament with growing concern. "Honey badgers have a thing called delayed pain response. Basically, Brutus won't actually notice he's been hurt until about 20 minutes after the fight is over." Captain Razorclaw tried to help Gutripper by grabbing Brutus around the middle, which was roughly equivalent to trying to handle an angry chainsaw that had achieved sentience and chosen violence as its primary career path. The moment Razorclaw's claws made contact, Brutus released Gutripper and spun in the captain's grip with the fluid grace of a creature that had evolved specifically to make larger predators regret their life choices. His claws found purchase on Razorclaw's scaled chest, and suddenly the great captain was learning why honey badgers were considered nature's way of saying, "Try me." "Oh, that's interesting," Emma observed as Razorclaw began bleeding from several new ventilation holes. "You guys have pretty tough armor, but Brutus here has claws designed for digging through tree roots and breaking into beehives. Your scales are basically just crunchy on the outside." Bloodfang, demonstrating the tactical acumen that had made him a lieutenant, decided this was an excellent time to shoot the small furry problem. He raised his energy weapon and took careful aim, which was when he learned about honey badger reaction times. Brutus spotted the weapon, released his grip on Razorclaw, and hit Bloodfang with a flying tackle that would have made professional wrestlers weep with envy. The energy blast went wide, scorching the ceiling and filling the air with the smell of ozone and burning metal. "Another fun fact," Emma continued, apparently conducting a lecture for an increasingly traumatized audience. "Honey badgers can run up to 19 miles per hour and jump 6 feet in any direction. Brutus here also has what we call tactical flexibility, which means he doesn't care about your personal space, your weapon range, or your feelings." Bloodfang was now discovering that honey badgers came equipped with teeth designed to crack bones and a jaw pressure that could open walnuts or windpipes with equal efficiency. His weapon clattered across the floor as he tried to pry 30 pounds of extremely motivated mammal off his throat. The fourth warrior, wisely, had backed toward the exit. This was when he learned that honey badgers also had something called situational awareness and a strong opinion about leaving parties early. Brutus bounded off Bloodfang, who was now making sounds like a deflating balloon, and intercepted the retreating Screeth with the enthusiasm of someone who had just discovered that the buffet was all you can eat. "The really impressive part," Emma said, watching Brutus demonstrate his climbing skills on a 7-foot vertical surface covered in natural armor, "is that honey badgers are actually pretty smart. Brutus isn't just attacking randomly, he's targeting your weak points. See how he's going for joints and gaps in your armor?" Captain Razorclaw, bleeding from multiple claw marks and missing several scales, tried to restore some dignity to the situation. "Impossible," he wheezed. "We are apex predators. We have conquered 12 star systems." "That's nice," Emma replied. "Brutus once fought off 3 adult male baboons because they got between him and a beehive. Baboons, by the way, are way scarier than you guys. They have opposable thumbs and use psychological warfare." Gutripper, who had managed to get his face back under his control, made the mistake of trying to corner Brutus against a wall. This was when he learned that honey badgers didn't believe in corners, walls, or the general concept of being trapped. Brutus went up the wall, across the ceiling, using exposed pipes and conduits, and dropped onto Gutripper's back like a furry missile with anger management issues. The alien went down hard, and Brutus rode him to the floor with the casual expertise of someone who had done this before. "You know what the really funny part is?" Emma asked, as the sounds of alien distress echoed through the maintenance bay. "Brutus isn't even trying that hard. This is just him being mildly annoyed. You should see him when he's actually angry." The maintenance bay had become a symphony of Screeth warriors learning that being apex predators on their home world didn't necessarily translate to success when facing Earth's least reasonable fauna. Captain Razorclaw, now backed against the far wall and bleeding from wounds that spelled out what looked suspiciously like profanity and claw marks, stared at the small human child who was calmly watching his elite warriors get systematically dismantled by what his scans had identified as harmless Earth livestock. "What manner of demon beast is this creature?" he gasped. Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. "Well, technically speaking, he's a honey badger, but the locals back home just call him Brutus. He's actually pretty sweet once you get to know him. He likes belly rubs and stealing sandwiches." As if to prove her point, Brutus paused in his systematic deconstruction of the Screeth boarding party and looked over at Emma with an expression that clearly said, "Are we keeping any of these, or can I finish my redecorating project?" "I think that's enough for now, buddy," Emma said gently. "Save some energy for the main course. I bet there are more of them on their ship." The surviving Screeth warriors looked at each other with dawning horror as they realized this was just the warm-up act. What followed could only be described as an educational field trip in the truest sense, if the subject being taught was why humans are considered space orcs by every civilized species in the galaxy. Captain Razorclaw, bleeding from multiple ventilation holes that Brutus had thoughtfully installed, made what he believed was a tactical withdrawal. In reality, he was running for his life, while a 30-pound ball of concentrated malice followed him through the corridors of his own ship. "You know," Emma said, jogging casually behind the chaos, "this is actually great cardio. Brutus usually makes me chase him around the backyard when he's stolen something he shouldn't have. This is just like that, except with more screaming and alien blood." The Deathclaw's revenge had been designed by Apex Predators for Apex Predators. Its corridors were wide enough for Screeth warriors to move in formation. Its ceilings were high enough to accommodate their intimidating height, and its ventilation system was perfectly sized for a honey badger to use as his personal highway system. Brutus had discovered the vents approximately 30 seconds after boarding the alien vessel, and he was now using them to demonstrate advanced guerrilla warfare techniques that would have impressed Special Forces operators across 17 star systems. The first indication that something had gone wrong came when Warrior Scale Slicer was walking down Corridor 7 and suddenly found himself being introduced to the ceiling by a small, furry missile that had dropped out of the air vent above him. "Oh, there's Scale Slicer," Emma observed, following the sounds of alien distress. "Brutus is teaching him about verticality. You see, honey badgers are excellent climbers, and they have this thing about attacking from unexpected angles." Scale Slicer was learning that unexpected angles included directly above your head while you're minding your own business. He was also learning that honey badgers had very strong opinions about personal space, specifically that everyone else's personal space belonged to them now. Meanwhile, in the ship's command center, the remaining crew was receiving increasingly panicked reports from throughout the vessel. "Bridge, this is engineering," came a strained voice over the comm. "Something is in the plasma conduits. It's small, it's fast, and it just dragged mechanic clawrender into the ventilation system." "Bridge, this is security," came another report. "We've lost contact with half the patrol teams. The last transmission was just screaming and what sounded like chittering." First Officer Ripfang turned to the ship's tactical officer with growing concern. "How many humans did we capture?" 37 adults, 14 spawn," came the response, "all secured in the cargo bay." "Then what is systematically dismantling our crew?" Emma's voice came over the ship's intercom system, which she had helpfully accessed using the control panel that Brutus had revealed by relocating its previous operator to the medical bay. "Hi there, alien ship people," her cheerful voice echoed through the corridors. "This is Emma Rodriguez representing Earth's Diplomatic Corps. I wanted to let you know that your hospitality has been noted and will be reciprocated accordingly." There was a pause, during which the crew could hear distant sounds of violence and what might have been purring. "Also, you guys really should have better security on your computer systems. I'm 12, and I just hacked into your mainframe using a maintenance terminal. That's either really embarrassing for you, or humans are just naturally good at breaking your stuff. Probably both." Captain Razorclaw burst onto the bridge, his armor hanging in tatters and his dignity somewhere back in the maintenance section of the human shuttle. "Report," he gasped, trying to maintain some semblance of command authority while bleeding from approximately 17 new orifices. "Sir, we appear to be under assault by—" First Officer Ripfang paused, consulting his tactical display. "One small human spawn and what our sensors are identifying as a compact Earth carnivore. Impossible. Deploy all remaining warriors, flood the corridors with armed troops. Nothing that small can defeat the might of the Screeth Empire." This was when they learned that honey badgers were not impressed by numerical superiority, tactical formations, or Empire bragging rights. The bridge's main view screen flickered to life, showing security camera footage from throughout the ship. On screen 1, Brutus was demonstrating advanced door-opening techniques on a sealed armory, using a combination of claws, determination, and what appeared to be lock-picking skills that would have made thieves' guild masters weep with professional jealousy. Screen 2 showed 3 Scrate warriors attempting to corner him in the mess hall, which was when they learned that honey badgers considered being outnumbered a personal challenge rather than a tactical disadvantage. Screen 3 displayed the aftermath of Brutus's visit to the weapons locker, where he had apparently decided that alien energy weapons were interesting chew toys and had systematically dismantled half the ship's armory. "You see," Emma's voice continued over the intercom, "the thing about honey badgers is that they don't really understand the concept of impossible odds. Brutus once ate an entire wasp nest because they annoyed him. You guys are basically just big, scaly wasps with better weapons." On screen 4, Brutus was having what appeared to be a philosophical discussion with a group of 5 warriors who had managed to surround him near the ship's reactor core. The discussion involved a lot of alien screaming and honey badger sound effects that suggested the philosophy in question was might makes right, and I have the might. Captain Razorclaw watched in growing horror as his elite warriors, trained from birth to be perfect killing machines, were systematically outclassed by a creature that looked like it should be selling adorable calendars rather than conducting military operations. "Sir," First Officer Ripvang said quietly, "perhaps we should consider diplomatic solutions." "Diplomatic solutions," Razorclaw snarled. "We are Skreath. We do not negotiate with prey." "With respect, sir," Ripfang replied, watching Screen 5 where Brutus was apparently redecorating the ship's trophy room with the contents of several warriors who had made the mistake of getting between him and something shiny. "I'm not entirely sure we qualify as predators in this particular food chain." Emma's voice came back over the intercom, now with the casual tone of someone providing customer service feedback. "Oh, and just so you know, Brutus found your engine room. He's not breaking anything important, but he did make friends with your chief engineer. Well, I say friends. The engineer is currently reconsidering his career choices while hanging upside down from a plasma conduit." The bridge crew looked at their tactical displays, which were showing system failures cascading throughout the ship as Brutus continued his guided tour of their vessel's most critical components. "Also," Emma continued, "I should mention that Brutus gets cranky when he's hungry. It's been about an hour since his last snack, so you might want to wrap this up before he decides your crew looks like an all-you-can-eat buffet." Captain Razorclaw stared at the screens, watching 30 pounds of Earth fauna systematically dismantle a ship designed to conquer star systems. Somewhere in the distance he could hear the sounds of his warriors learning advanced lessons in humility from a creature that probably couldn't spell apex predator, but could certainly demonstrate why the concept was relative. "Sir," came a trembling voice over the comm, "this is the medical bay. We're running out of bandages, surgical supplies, and dignity. Request permission to surrender." "Skreath do not surrender," Razorclaw growled automatically. "Then perhaps," came Emma's helpful voice, "we could discuss alternative arrangements. I'm thinking you guys drop us off at the nearest space station, apologize for the inconvenience, and promise to tell everyone you meet that humans have really unreasonable pets." On the main screen, Brutus appeared to have found the ship's central command nexus, and was investigating it with the kind of focused attention that suggested he was either trying to understand alien technology or deciding whether it would taste better with honey. The rescue fleet that arrived 47 minutes later consisted of 3 Earth Defense Force cruisers, 2 diplomatic vessels, and 1 very confused xenobiology research ship that had been hastily redirected when long-range sensors detected what appeared to be a complete ecosystem collapse aboard a Skreath war vessel. Admiral Rebecca Torres, commanding officer of the EDF Indomitable, had seen many things during her 30-year career. She had negotiated peace treaties with crystalline hive minds, survived 3 different types of temporal anomalies, and once had to explain to a sentient gas cloud why humans couldn't just phase shift their molecular structure for better communication. But she had never encountered a distress signal quite like this one. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Liu, "we're receiving a transmission from the Skreath vessel. It's unusual." "Define unusual, Lieutenant." "Well, ma'am, it appears to be a 12-year-old human girl providing a status report while what sounds like a small mammal systematically restructures alien architecture in the background." Admiral Torres rubbed her temples. "Put it through." Emma's cheerful voice filled the bridge, accompanied by distant sounds that seemed to involve metal being creatively rearranged and alien voices pleading for various forms of mercy. "Hi there, rescue people. This is Emma Rodriguez, calling from the bridge of the Skreath warship Deathclaw's Revenge. Current status is secure, though we've had to make some management changes." "This is Admiral Torres," Admiral Torres replied. "This is Admiral Torres of the Earth Defense Force. Are you injured? What's your current situation?" "Oh, I'm fine, thanks for asking. Brutus is also fine, though he's a little cranky about having his nap interrupted. He's currently conducting a comprehensive security review of the alien vessel. Very thorough, lots of attention to detail." There was a pause, during which the bridge crew could hear what sounded suspiciously like a honey badger having strong opinions about alien engineering standards. "The previous management has been relieved of duty," Emma continued conversationally. "Captain Razorclaw is in what used to be the brig, though Brutus made some modifications to improve ventilation. Most of the crew is in the medical bay, the cargo hold, or scattered around various corridors, depending on how quickly they learn to cooperate." Admiral Torres looked at her tactical officer, who was staring at his displays with the expression of someone whose instruments were telling him things that couldn't possibly be true. "Ma'am," he whispered, "sensors confirm minimal life signs throughout the Skreath vessel. Most appear to be in medical distress. There are no active weapon signatures, no shield emissions, and what appears to be a single small mammalian life form moving freely through the ship's command sections. Emma, Admiral Torres said carefully, when you say management changes, what exactly do you mean? Well, Brutus and I had a little discussion with the aliens about their hospitality practices, and we've reached what I think you'd call a mutual understanding. They've agreed to return all the kidnapped passengers, apologize for the inconvenience, and provide testimonials about the effectiveness of human diplomatic methods. Another crash echoed through the comm, followed by what might have been aliens sobbing. Brutus is just finishing up some renovations to their weapons systems, Emma explained. He has very strong opinions about proper disarmament protocols. Also, he found their food stores and discovered that alien ration packs taste terrible. He's been leaving reviews. Admiral Torres' xenobiology officer, Dr. Sarah Chen, leaned forward with professional fascination. Admiral, if I'm understanding correctly, a single honey badger has successfully captured an entire Screeth war vessel? That's about right, Emma confirmed. Though to be fair, they started it. Brutus was just sleeping and they woke him up with all their dramatic entrance stuff. You know how he gets about his sleep schedule. The rescue fleet's boarding parties, when they finally docked with the Screeth vessel, found a scene that would be talked about in military academies for decades to come. The ship's corridors looked like they had been redesigned by a very small, very determined architect, with anger management issues and access to industrial-grade claws. Bulkheads had been opened in ways that weren't technically doors but served the same function. The ventilation system had been converted into what appeared to be a comprehensive transportation network. The weapons lockers had been systematically audited and found wanting. Captain Martinez of the boarding team found Emma in the ship's command center, sitting in the captain's chair and reading what appeared to be a children's book while Brutus napped contentedly in her lap. Around them, the bridge crew of the Deathclaw's Revenge sat in various states of technological restraint, having been secured with their own binding equipment in a display of efficiency that would have impressed professional security specialists. "Afternoon, Captain Martinez," Emma said politely, looking up from her book. "Thanks for coming to get us. I hope you don't mind, but we've made ourselves comfortable." Captain Martinez looked around the bridge, noting the carefully arranged alien crew members who were watching Brutus with the kind of respectful terror usually reserved for natural disasters and tax auditors. "Emma, what exactly happened here?" "Oh, you know, the usual. Aliens interrupted our field trip, made some threats, learned about Earth's diplomatic policies regarding uninvited guests. Standard stuff, really." She scratched behind Brutus's ears, and the honey badger made a sound that was part purr, part growl, and entirely satisfied with the day's work. "The important thing is that everyone learned something today," Emma continued. "The aliens learned about proper guest etiquette. Brutus learned that alien starships have excellent climbing surfaces, and I learned that honey badgers make really effective diplomats when properly motivated." First Officer Ripfang, who was secured to his station with what appeared to be his own restraining cables, spoke up in a voice that suggested recent trauma. "Human child," he said carefully, "your companion has agreed to accept our surrender and spare our lives if we provide safe passage to your people and a formal apology to your government." "That's right," Emma confirmed. "Brutus negotiated very reasonable terms. You get to keep your ship, most of your crew, and your dignity, such as it is. In exchange, you're going to tell everyone you meet that humans are under the protection of creatures that don't believe in mercy, proportional response, or the concept of acceptable losses." Admiral Torres's voice came over the comm system. "Emma, we're ready to transfer you and the other passengers back to our ships." "Sounds good, Admiral. Just give me a minute to pack up." Emma gently lifted Brutus, who stretched and looked around the bridge with the satisfied expression of someone who had completed a successful home improvement project. "Brutus wants to keep the captain's chair," Emma announced. "He says it's comfortable and has good strategic positioning. Also, he's marked it as his territory, so according to Honey Badger law, it's his now." Captain Razorclaw, who was secured in the corner with what appeared to be his own command codes binding him to a computer terminal, made a sound that might have been agreement or might have been despair. As the rescue teams prepared to transfer the human passengers back to their own ships, Emma paused at the bridge entrance and turned back to the assembled Screeth crew. "Oh, one more thing," she said brightly. "Brutus wanted me to mention that if anyone ever bothers humans again, he'll be personally disappointed. And when honey badgers are disappointed, they tend to express their feelings through interpretive violence and creative property destruction." She looked down at Brutus, who was surveying his conquered territory with the calm satisfaction of someone who had spent a productive afternoon educating aliens about the realities of Earth's ecosystem. "Plus, he really likes space travel now. I think we might make this a regular thing." The last thing the Screeth crew heard as Emma and Brutus left the bridge was the honey badger making a sound that was definitely, unmistakably, laughter. 6 months later, the Galactic Council would officially designate Earth as a protected diplomatic zone and add honey badgers to the list of species too unreasonable for military engagement. The Screet Empire would quietly abandon their expansion plans and take up agriculture instead, finding that growing vegetables was much safer than hunting humans. And Emma Rodriguez would become the youngest person ever to receive the Diplomatic Service Medal, though she would always insist that Brutus did most of the actual negotiating. After all, as she frequently told anyone who would listen, humans weren't really the apex predators of Earth. They were just smart enough to make friends with the ones who were.